Right, this is the Combined Science Trilogy exam. It's Biology Paper 2F, so it's 2 Foundation for 2022. The first question. This question is about genetics. Crop plants are genetically modified, so that means their genes within inside them are changed to get useful characteristics. So maybe it could be a plant that grows taller, produces more fruit, is resistant to bacteria of some sort. Which useful characteristics are crops genetically modified for? Fewer roots? Who cares? Larger yield? Yeah. Smaller fruit? No. What is one concern about GM crops? One concern. Okay. GM crops will add to global warming. No, it's just a plant. It's not going to make any difference. GM crops will cause air pollution. No, why should they? GM crops will harm wildlife. Okay, let's just have a little think about that one. GM crops will produce too much food. Well, you can never really produce too much food. So I think the wildlife one there is the fact that there's genes that are then put into those crops and we don't know whether they could kind of transfer to other things or not and harm other types of wildlife. Some inherited disorders are caused by a faulty piece of DNA. Okay, so inherited. What is the name of a piece of DNA that codes for a characteristic? So we've got cell, nucleus. Inside the nucleus, we've got chromosomes, usually sort of straight lines, and each individual kind of little part on that chromosome there is a gene. DNA contains a code for making substances in the cell. What type of substance is made using the DNA code? Well, substances, I mean DNA, it's all to do with growth. Okay, so DNA codes for making growth or having growth to happen. So it's not fats, it's not starch, it's not sugar, it is proteins. Because proteins makes your enzymes, protein makes the vast majority of kind of useful structures within the body. Cystic fibrosis is an inherited disorder. It's horrible, right? So what happens with that is you get excess mucus kind of in the throat, in the digestive system, and that sort of mucus is much thicker and stickier than we have. The allele means kind of the sort of the symbol for it, right? So where you might have F, each one of those is an allele. It's a different version of the same gene. The allele for cystic fibrosis is recessive, right? Which means it's small. So the small letter is recessive, right? I mean, it means that it's not usually kind of shown within the person. The allele for not having cystic fibrosis is H. So capital H is the dominant one. What is a recessive allele? An allele that is always expressed? No. An allele is only expressed if only one copy is present. You never have only just one copy, right? You always have 2 copies, one from your mum, one from your dad. An allele that is only expressed if 2 copies are present. So if you've got HH, it isn't expressed. If you've got HH, it is expressed. Okay. A man and a woman do not have CF. The man has alleles HF. So what he is, he's a carrier. He's got the recessive H. What word describes the alleles of the man? Okay, so he has got HH. Now I'm just going to start at the bottom. Phenotype is the physical appearance. It's kind of like the physical type of that person. So that has got nothing to do with the alleles. It's what they look like. Then we've got homozygous and heterozygous. Homozygous means 2 of the same. Heterozygous means 2 different alleles. So he has got HH, so therefore he is HH. He's got 2 different ones. That is hetero, like heterosexual, male and a female. Homosexual is then 2 of the same. The man and the woman want to have a child. Complete figure 1 to show the possible genotypes. So they're the types of genes of the child. Draw a ring around the genotype of a child who will have CF. Right, so this is on a Punnett square. So what you do is you just go across there, and I'm going to write HH. Across there, I'm going to write HH. Right, big H, little h. I'm going to write big H, little h. Even though it looks like you should do the little h first, always do the capital first. So I've probably got 2 marks there now. Draw a ring around the genotype of the child who will have, it's the one they did for me, because it's got both of the recessive alleles. What is the chance of a child, of the man and the woman having CF, right? So if you think about it, there was 4 different options in there, and only one of them gave the CF. So therefore, it'd be 1 over 4, converted into a percentage, will be 25%. The woman is pregnant. It's fantastic, right? The woman can have embryo screening. So that is then where they're going to look at the genetics of the embryo while it is then still very, very small in the mother to find out if it has cystic fibrosis. Give one reason why the woman might not want to have embryo screening. Okay, it could harm the embryo. Because basically what it is, it's like a needle that kind of goes into where the embryo is, and it pulls out some of the genetic material that's in there. Could harm the embryo. It could harm the mother. It could cause a miscarriage. Okay, so that's then when the baby comes out, when it shouldn't be coming out. Maybe the parents do not want to make a choice. So maybe they don't want to know if it's got cystic fibrosis or not, because ultimately it's going to be their kid anyway. Totally understand that. And it could be against religious beliefs. Right, on a school field. One area of the soil was usually wet, right? So I've got my school field, there's my school field, right? And that area there is wet, right? Another area of the soil is usually dry, okay? That area there is dry. Okay, I'm just making it up, okay? It could be anywhere, I'm just trying to get a picture in my head. Students investigated, investigate, that means required practical. Okay, as soon as it starts talking about investigate, but I kind of work that anyway because it's talking about a school field. Students investigated the effect of water in the soil on the number of buttercups. So for this one, we're looking at water and we're looking at the number of buttercups in each area. On the field, the students marked out an area of 10 metres by 10 metres on the wet soil, an area of 10 metres by 10 metres on the dry soil. So they've got the field like that. Over in that top left-hand corner is wet. So what they've done is they've done 10 metres by 10 metres. And there they've got 10 metres, so that's wet. And then dry, 10 metres by 10 metre square. Describe how a quadrat can be used to measure the size of the buttercup population in the wet. So we're only talking wet. So we're only talking that bit, and it's 10 metres by 10 metres, very conveniently. Okay, so what you've got to do is you've got to randomly place the quadrat. Okay, best way to do that is I would get my 10 by 10 square there, and I'd go 1, 2, 3 all the way up to 10, and I'd go 1, 2, 3 all the way up to 10. Turn it into a grid. Okay, that's obviously a really, really good grid. Right, and then what I do is get some sort of random name number generator, and it would come up with 2, 6. So I'd go across 2, up 6, and I would put my quadrat in that little section there. Okay, so I'm just going to put in there random numbers on a grid. Okay, then what you do is you count the buttercups in the quadrat and record. Okay, so that's your first one kind of done. Then what you're going to do is you're going to repeat it at least 5 times. Take a mean for the quadrats. The area that we're talking about is 100 square meters because it's 10 times 10. And then what you'll then do is you will then estimate the number of buttercups. Now just be very careful, right, with this, because usually a quadrat is 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters. So therefore 4 would make up 1 meter squared. Okay, so just be careful when they start chucking numbers into it as well. What type of factor is water? Right, well, we've got them here. We've got biotic, control, and abiotic. Biotic is everything living, so water is not living. Control, you're not controlling anything there. It is an abiotic factor. Give 2 factors which might affect the number of buttercups growing on the school field. Do not refer to water. Okay, so do not write water. So I could put things like light intensity. Okay, is there a big tree? Temperature. I could put competition. Is there another plant there that is kind of in a certain area that overwhelms the buttercups? Grazing. Okay, that's if you've got cows on your school field, which is probably quite unlikely. Is it an area where there might be trampling going on? The pH of the soil? They're kind of any sort of things that could affect the number of buttercups growing. Complete the sentence. Choose the answers from the box. Control, dependent, independent. Don't mess in class, stay calm. Dependent is measure, independent change, same calm, control. In the investigation, the number of buttercups in each quadrant was. All right, so dependent is measure. So we're measuring, so we're counting the number of buttercups. So therefore, it is the dependent variable. Oh, that's a field. Oh, and that's 1 quadrat. Oh, and it's 1/2 meter by 1/2 meter. Okay, so this question then, calculate the area of the quadrat. Don't forget, get a calculator out, right? Don't be guessing, use a calculator every time. So if it's 1/2 meter by 1/2 meter, to work out the area, you go 0.5 times 0.5. You on your calculator, it comes out as 0.25. And you put your 0.25 there, meters squared. The mean number of buttercups in 1 quadrat was 8. So there's my quadrat, and in that quadrat was 8. Calculate the number of buttercups per meter squared, right? So I said before, right, that 1 quadrat is 1/4 of a meter squared. So that is 1/2 meter squared. 1 meter squared. So what we'll have is we'll have 8 multiplied by 4, because then there's 4 quadrats. So 8, 16, 24, 32. 32 buttercups per meter squared. Make sure you're writing in your calculation because it's 2 marks. In a laboratory, another group of students investigated the effect of soil acidity. Ooh, soil acidity, so now we're talking about pH. On the growth of beans. This is the method used. Put soil with a neutral pH in 2 large boxes, right? So I've got a box. Okay, there's a box, and I've got a second box actually. Right, 2 large boxes, and funny enough, they are exactly the same size. Put soil with a neutral pH in 2 large boxes. So it's got pH 7 going into both of those boxes. Add acid into soil 1, into one of the boxes. So acid goes into there. Plant some bean seeds in each box. So bean, oh, so I'll change the colour. Bean. Water the seeds over 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, measure the height of the bean plants in each box. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to measure the height, and I'm going to measure the height. So I'm assuming what I'm going to do is I'm going to be comparing the height between pH 7 and pH 5. Calculate the mean height of the bean plants in each box. Give 2 improvements the students could make to the method. Repeat. Okay, if you repeat it, you're always going to get better results. Same amount of water. Okay, as it talked about, water the seeds. Mass of soil. Okay, put soil. Vary the pH. Okay, because it only says put acid in. What did you put? Concentrated sulfuric acid in, or do you put vinegar in? Same number of beans, because it says here put some beans. Same spacing. Doesn't tell you where you're going to put the beans. Same size box. 2 large boxes. There's a large box the size of a room, and another large box the size of a TV. Same light. Same temperature. So what you can do from this is you can actually look down the question there, and you can see all the vague things that are in there are your answers to the question. Table 1 shows the results. Fabulous. Acid soil, neutral soil. All right, so 5 beans in each one. Okay, right, all makes sense. Right, acid soil always looks a little bit smaller. Okay, they've done a mean, right, of the acid soil, and there's an X there. I wonder what they're going to ask us to do. Here we go. Calculate the mean value X in table 1. Okay, so 11 plus 12 plus 11 plus 17 plus 19, add them all together, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. So if you add all them together, it is 70 divided by 5 equals 14. So the mean is 14. Don't forget to write it in the actual answer line. What conclusion can the students make about the effect of acid soil on the growth of bean plants? Bean plants grow less well in acidic soil. Okay, they can be shorter in acidic soil. Okay, they're not asking for any more than that, they're just a conclusion. So a conclusion is a fact that you've then found out. Right, the theory of evolution by natural selection was suggested by Charles Darwin in 1859. Cool. Evidence from fossils supports Darwin's theory. What evidence supports the theory of evolution by natural selection? Okay, survival of the fittest. Right, so what evidence supports the theory of evolution by natural selection? Knowledge of how DNA controls inheritance. That is very true. Knowledge of why on earth would it matter to do with natural selection about a meteorite or wherever it is that killed the dinosaurs? Knowledge of how Earth was formed? Irrelevant. Knowledge of what causes global warming? Irrelevant. That's a little mosquito thing in amber. Figure 3 shows a fossil fly preserved in amber. Beautiful yellow colour, absolutely fantastic. The fossil formed when the amber solidified from the fly. So it's a bit like sort of tree sap dribbling out of a tree. All right, and when it actually covers an insect, it then goes hard. Okay. Why has the fly been preserved? Because that could be tens of thousands of years old, right? It looks exactly as it was before. Tick one box. The amber has been kept at a constant temperature. We have no idea. The fly was soft-bodied. Surely if it's soft-bodied, it's going to decay more. There was no oxygen. Decay is all about oxygen. So if there's no oxygen, the little thing isn't going to decay. This diagram is a bit weird, really. Figure 4 shows a simplified evolutionary tree for the insect group of animals. So we're looking at insects, insect group of animals. So if we start here, what comes along is here, there's a little division here. And if it goes that way, it makes silverfish. And if it goes this way, wings evolved. So all the things then below this here have wings. Then it gets to B, and this way, dragonflies have got wings, and this way, wings are folded. And then we get to C. So everything after this point here, their wings are folded. And then at C, it divides, D, it divides again. Which present-day insect evolved first? Silverfish. Oh, this question looks a bit funny. There's the same diagram again. Animals A, B, C, D were ancestors of present-day insects. Which animal is the most recent ancestor of both grasshoppers and beetles? Grasshoppers and beetles. Okay, so grasshoppers and beetles. So let's follow it along. C. Name the group of present-day insects which have wings which do not fold. So that is the point there where wings folded. So therefore, wings evolved dragonflies. I think this question is all really about understanding what on earth the diagram's talking about. 3.6. The housefly has the binomial name Musca domestica. Is that right? Does it housefly is domesticated? But so we are Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens. Okay, it's kind of our binomial name of humans is Homo sapiens. Right. Crikey. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Right. Okay. Anthropoda, diptera. Oh my God, what on earth is this going on? Shows parts of the classification of the housefly, complete table 2. So I'm going to have to write in there, and there. Crikey, using these words. Right, now it tells me in the question the binomial name is Musca domestica, right? That is kind of the species name. It's where we are humans and we are that, right? So if it's Musca domestica, I'm going to put in Musca there, and I'm not going to be able to fit this in, I'll do it in red, domestica there. So if it's humans, I would be putting Homo sapiens there. Now, so I've done domestica, I've done musca, and I've got insecta, and I've got animalia. Right, now it kind of starts off, this is big and this is small. This is lots of animals, this is one individual animal. Right, now which one of those sounds the biggest? Animalia or insecta? Animalia, that's one of the massive kingdoms. And then insecta is in that one there. I think that's quite a tricky question actually. Kowos, how we pronounce it, proposed a 3-domain system of classification. Which domain are insects in? Right, so insects, prokaryotes are bacteria, archaea are ancient bacteria, so it must be eukaryotes, right, where they have a nucleus, right? So each one of them has a nucleus. So this question then is about the endocrine system, which is then all about hormones. Okay, Figure 5 shows the position of endocrine glands in the human body. So A is the pituitary gland. That produces things like growth hormone. It's the master gland. It produces growth hormone, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone. That one there is the thyroid gland, and it controls metabolism, right? So it's things like, metabolism is all the chemical reactions within the body. It's not just how fast you eat food or process food, and it produces things like thyroxine. C is the adrenal gland, and there's a pretty big clue on that one really, right, in the fact that it produces adrenaline, the fight or flight hormone. And then that funny shaped one there is the pancreas, okay, and that produces a lot of enzymes and insulin for controlling glucose. Which letter shows the pancreas? Just done that. D. Which letter shows the thyroid gland? B. Hormones travel from the gland where they are made to the target organ. So what a gland is, it's kind of a bit like, just like a bag. It's a bag that produces hormones. To the target organ where they have an effect, right? So here's me, okay, there's me, right? And what I've got is I've got my adrenal gland there, right? And I want some adrenaline because to my foot. Okay, I don't know why I'd want adrenaline to my foot. How's it going to get there? It's going to not go in nerve because it's nothing to do with nerves. It's going to come out of the gland and it's going to travel through something to get to my foot. How do they travel from gland to the organ system? Is they travel through the blood. Okay, so what they are is they are blood. They are in the plasma. Okay, so dissolved. You could even put in arteries, veins. Veins? God, that doesn't look anything like veins at all. Veins, VEI, and capillaries. When blood glucose concentration becomes too high, right, so what you've done is you just had a Mars bar. Hormone X from the pancreas causes a decrease. Hormone X is insulin. So insulin decreases the blood glucose. So if you've got high blood glucose, insulin decreases it. In what two ways does hormone X decrease the blood? Glucose is broken down. No, that would just be silly. Glucose is converted to glycogen. It is. Glucose is excreted by the kidneys. No, that's weeing it out. Glucose moves from blood into the cells. It is. So often what it is, it's converted. So glucose is converted to glycogen, right? And it's often stored in liver and muscle cells, ready for them when it's then needed. So that is then insulin's job there. Glucose moves into the small intestine? No. Right? Don't forget now, 2 boxes. If you tick 1 box, you're daft. Just have a guess if you have no idea. If you tick 3 boxes, you're also daft, because you then will end up getting nothing. Always a graph. I like graphs. Suggest what time of day the woman ate her breakfast of sugar-coated cereal. Right, so let's have a look at the graph. Blood glucose. So that is then how much sugar's in her blood. Time of the day. Dead straightforward. So what time did she eat her breakfast of sugar-coated cereal? So that is pretty much when her blood glucose goes shooting up. And I think it's going to be around about there, which is going to be 8:30. Same graph. The man, dotted line there, in figure 6 has type 2 diabetes. So type 1 is the one that you're born with. And type 2 is the one that you've kind of created yourself by having very, very poor diet and just basically not looking after yourself. Type 2 diabetes but has not been treated. The man ate the same type of food as the woman at the same time as the woman. So he ate the food here. Now, because he can't control the glucose level, suggest what his blood glucose concentration would be at 9 o'clock. So where hers is there, his is just going to shoot up. Okay, now it's probably going to shoot up at a similar-ish rate. So I would probably say blood glucose at around about 6.5, because what it is, it's going to be about there, right? But it could be up to 20, right, depending on how he eats. But the logic of the graph is it goes up at the same rate and it gets to about there, so it could be anything from 6.5, 7 on the actual graph itself. The man is an obese office worker. Okay, so he's overweight, he doesn't exercise, eats sugary snacks at his desk. Okay, heart attack waiting to happen. Give 2 lifestyle changes a doctor might recommend to the man to help him control his diabetes. Low carbohydrate diet. Okay, so that's kind of eating that, except doing that one there. Regular exercise. Okay, I'm putting regular now, so you can just exercise once, but that ain't going to solve the problem. That deals with that one there. Obese office worker, lose mass. That deals with that one there. So what I've done is I've just used their question to get my answers out. Describe how a low blood glucose concentration would lead to a person feeling weak. Okay, read the question there. Low blood glucose concentration, feeling weak. I think weak then is a key word that's in there. So if you've got low blood glucose, there would be less respiration. That means there would be less energy. And where's energy then needed? There will be then less energy for muscles, which is then dealing with the weak bit. Now the following questions are then the crossover questions, right? These are then the last 2 on the foundation paper, but they're then the kind of the first 2 on the higher paper. And they're kind of the differentiation. You need to be able to get these questions right, then you get 4s and your 5s. Question number 1. This question is about the cycling of water and carbon, so water and carbon in an ecosystem. Which reaction produce water? Right, so aerobic respiration. So I'm taking in oxygen, I'm using up glucose, and I make CO2 plus H2O. Okay, interesting. Anaerobic respiration, what I'm using is I'm using up glucose. I haven't got very much oxygen, right? So what I'm then doing is I'm making lactic acid plus CO2. Photosynthesis is then the opposite of aerobic respiration. So that is then CO2 plus H2O goes to oxygen and I'm making glucose. So back to the question, which reaction produces water? We have got water. Right. No question on this one here. The water cycle provides water for plants and animals on land before the water goes into lakes and seas. Figure 1 represents the water cycle. Now it's quite difficult, the water cycle, you can get all sorts and hundreds of different diagrams from it. But what you've got to do is mostly you've got to know the names on the arrows. Okay, so you've got to know the names on the arrows. Now what I suspect the next question is going to be is it's going to be label 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there we have it. Okay, so name the processes 1 to 5, 5 marks for this, right? So what you've got to do is you've got to learn the water cycle. If you know all the words, right, then this is easy 5 marks. So number 1 is evaporation. So evaporation. So that's evaporation, so that's where it's going from a lake up into the atmosphere. Number 2, it then
condensation, right? So that is then when it goes from being sort of gas vapor in the clouds, in the sky, to where it then becomes clouds. Number 3 is then when it's raining. Now obviously you can't put raining, you've got to put precipitation. Okay, that's then the posh name for raining. Then what it does, it kind of goes through the soil and down little streams and things like that, right, and gets down to back to the lake. That is then called drainage. Okay, so that is then number 4, where it goes back into the lake. We've then got number 5, right, which is slightly different, right, is, we'll do that in dark green, where we're going from a tree to vapor in the sky. Okay, now what you've got to do is you've got to think about your proper biology, right, and we've got leaves going into vapor into the sky. How does water get out of a plant into the sky? It is transpiration, right, and then just remember, right, that is the xylem that is doing that, specialised because they're dead. The other word that could have then come up would be translocation, which is the movement of glucose in the phloem. Question number 1.3. Okay, in 2007 the population of the world was 6,000 million, which is 6 billion. A study found that 4.5% of the population had severe water shortage. How many people, calculate means I'm going to be doing a sum, calculate how many people had severe water shortage, give the answer in standard form. Alright, so let's go for it. So question number 3, so what I'm going to do is I've got to write 6000, I'm going to put little commas in between because that helps me, 000, 000. That's the number of people. And what I want is, I want 4.5% of that. So I'm going to do times by 4.5 divided by 100, which then gives me my percentage, 4.5. Sometimes what I might do on that is, because I know I might go 0.0545, I might just multiply it by that because I've then divided it. Okay, but either way you do it. So my answer for that is then 270,000. That's what it says in my calculator. Okay. Now I've got my answer there, and what I could do is I could write it in there and I'll get 2 marks. But what I've got to do is I've got to convert it to standard form. Now standard form is where you've got the number at the start, then a decimal, and then the rest of the numbers following on from it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of work this out in my head. Okay, so I'm going to do it in blue, so I'm going to say the decimal point is there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so I've moved it 8 times, so it's 2.7 times 10 to the 8. So my answer there will be 2.7 times 10 to the 8. Now my biggest tip with this ever is work out how to do standard form on your calculator. Right, there will be a button somewhere that converts between big long numbers like that and standard form, and you need to know what it is, because how easy would that be otherwise? 1.4. Why do more people have severe water shortage now than in 2007? Right, so what we've got to do there is we've got to think 16 years ago. Right, let's just go through them. Climate change has increased in the area of deserts. Deserts have got bigger? Yes. Each person drinks less water? No. More water is used to grow crops? Yes. Sea levels have risen because the ice caps are melting, right? That may well have happened, right? But what's that got to do with water shortage? Nothing. Some countries have built desalting factories for seawater. What's that got to do with more? Nothing. Okay, right, so now what we're doing is we're looking at the carbon cycle. Now what I've done is here I've chucked in a sort of diagram of the carbon cycle. Okay, obviously it's not part of the exam paper, but I think it ended up being quite useful. So leaves on a tree contain carbon compounds. Okay. In autumn, the leaves fall to the ground. So we've got our tree. There's the ground. Leaves fall to the ground. Microorganisms in the soil recycle carbon, right? So the leaves fall to the ground, right? And microorganisms then recycle the carbon from the leaves so that the carbon is used for new plant growth, right? So what we're here now is we're now talking about microorganisms do something with the leaves so that then plants can then use it. So now if we think about it here, right, so new plant growth. Plants don't take carbon dioxide in from the roots, they take it in through their leaves as CO2, right, for the process of photosynthesis, right? So we need to be kind of linking in that. So it's how do microorganisms do stuff with leaves to make carbon dioxide for new plant growth, okay? It's quite a tricky question to actually come out with. So if I now look at my diagram here, right, we've got leaves. I'll just change the colour of that. Let's have blue. No, let's have black. Nice black, right? We've got decay. Leaves fall off the tree, and what they do is decay. All right. So leaves, when they fall off, decay, and that is the microorganisms. Oh my God, I'm not going to fit it on. That is the microorganisms that are then doing it. They then will follow the cycle round. Okay, and also what will happen is the actual stuff, the dead organisms and waste products, which is from the leaves, will then do root respiration. So we've then got respiration of microorganisms releasing CO2. Right, so what we've got, the leaves have fallen off, they decay, which is because of the microorganisms, which is the part that we're talking about. Those microorganisms do respiration, releasing carbon dioxide, and then what is the point in that? The CO2, and this is then linking this bit here, the new plant growth. CO2 is used for photosynthesis. Now I think that's quite a tricky question actually. And for 4 marks, what you've got to do is you've got to remember, right, the carbon cycle. 1.6. What is one benefit of fallen leaves for living plants? What is one benefit of fallen leaves for living plants? Okay, so let's go then. Energy is released for living plants. Well, no, energy isn't released. Insect pests in the soil are killed. No, just leaves falling on the floor. Nitrates are released into the soil. Okay, now I know nitrates are useful. Nitrates are fertilizers, right? So I suspect that one then is true. Let's just go to the last one just to check. Oxygen is supplied to root cells. What's that got to do with leaves falling on the floor? So that question there is a bit of a process of elimination, really. Right? I do know that nitrates, right, is all to do with fertilizers, and nitrates do come from fallen leaves. Oh, big paragraph. Right. So question number 2: water pollution is a problem for humans and wildlife. True. Explain how human activities are polluting rivers, lakes and seas. Now, rivers, lakes and seas, so we're talking about water. So how are humans polluting water? 6-mark question. Explain. So what I've done here is I've put the mark scheme in. So number 1 is simply stated, right? The relevance is not clear, no attempt at logical thinking. Level 2, relevant points are identified and there are attempts at logical thinking. Number 3, which is then your marks 5 to 6, relevant points are identified, given in detail and logically linked. Right, so what we've got to do here is we've got to think about the reasons why and logically link them to the polluting of rivers, lakes and seas. Right, so what I'm going to do firstly is I'm going to think of all the ways in which humans are polluting water. sewage. Fertilizers. Herbicides. Toxic chemicals. Waste like litter, plastics, stuff like that. So what I've done there is I've done 5. Now because this is a 6-mark question, right, probably only need to do 3, right? It's never going to do any harm adding extras if you kind of got a pretty good idea that they're right. So explain how human activities are polluting rivers, lakes and seas. So sewage, what that does is if you've got sewage going into rivers, lakes and seas, algae grows, and that starts the process of eutrophication, because what it's doing, it's feeding the algae. Fertilizers, exactly the same thing, it is eutrophication. Okay, now it's not asking you what eutrophication is in this, so what you just got to do is you then got to just add it in. Herbicides, right, what will happen if you put loads of herbicides from human activity? It'll just kill all plants. And also what it does is it builds up in food chain. Number 4, toxic chemicals. Okay, what they can do is literally they can kill outright or again build up. Waste, right, which is then polluting things, right? So what we could have is we could have plastics eaten. We could have caught in a net, not biodegradable. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the question again. Explain how human activities are polluting rivers, lakes and seas. So what I've done there is I've done 5 things. You could probably only just do 3. All right, then the question is that explain how human activities are polluting, right? The consequence of all this happening is rivers, God, I can't write it all, rivers, lakes and seas could eventually die. Living organisms don't live in those water areas anymore. Now that last bit was a bit waffly really, all right, but the point of the matter is I've gone through different ways in which human activities pollute, and then what I've done at the end is I've then told the reason why or what actually happens to those places once they are polluted.